Here. Share that differently. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, there we go. That should be good. So hopefully you can see on here, it says Exam 1 Review. And then I just kind of put on some things here that would be good to make sure that you know for the different modules. And also this exam review that we're going to be doing together, let me go ahead and put that in the chat so that everyone can have that. Just 1 second to do this. All right. And if you have questions, like specifically, like, that you want to make sure that you get answered, then please make sure that you unmute yourself and let me know, because that's what I want to make sure that I am able to help you with.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So does this part that with us going over it, does this count as the practice for this week?
What do you mean by that? The practice?
That's like the one review session attendance. Is that?
Yeah. So that's what this is. So either, attending it now or watching it back. If you can't attend live, but it's always nice when you can attend live because then you can get your questions answered. So yeah, that's what this is. So after this, to get those points for that assignment, you just go in there and it just asks you just a couple of questions about things that you learned here at this review session. And so just go in and answer those and you'll get those for you. Okay. And yeah, you're welcome. So hopefully you guys got that. I mean, what I'm going to be going through with you tonight in the chat. So just a few things. There is
lost all my pencils.
So we are going to be, make sure that you know how to understand and use percentages, right? Absolute and relative change. Solve problems using rates and proportions, and then using dimensional analysis. I'll talk about that as we go along. That's just basically converting from one unit of measurement to another, right? In the trig module, you want to make sure you know how to use the Pythagorean theorem. So you need to have that memorized. It's not going to be given to you on the exam. Make sure you know those trigonometric functions, right? The sine, cosine, and tangent. And again, we'll talk about those more tonight. And also the inverse trig functions. And then being able to solve some real world problems using those trig functions that also involve right triangles. Okay? And then on voting theory, just understanding the different voting methods. This understand different fairness criteria. I just want to make sure it's clear. I'm not going to ask you any questions specifically like, what fairness criteria is this? So you don't have to have those memorized. It's more of just like looking at it, you know, I mean, because sometimes those fairness criteria, as you saw, you know, in the notes and maybe as you were doing the assignment, sometimes it came out to be, you know, different depending on which method you used. And so I just want you to keep those in mind, but I'm not going to be asking anything specific on the exam about those. So don't worry about memorizing those. Okay, but do know the different types of voting methods and how to figure things out with those methods. That's what I'm going to be asking a lot about. Okay, and like this number 3. All right, let's see. Got so the exam has, let's see here, has 14 questions. Okay, and you'll have an hour and a half to take that. You can use a scientific calculator on your exam or a regular, you know, 4-function calculator. You just can't use a graphing calculator. If you don't have a scientific calculator, like you only have a graphing calculator, you can borrow one from the testing center during the exam. They have some there for you to use. But if you have your own, especially with some of those trig functions and stuff like that, if you're using one that you're not as familiar with, it might be kind of tricky. So it might be good to just bring one that you're familiar with, as long as you have one that will work. Okay. Yeah, so there is 14 questions. Yep, so there's 14 on this one. And sometimes I could vary the exams depending on like how long each of the questions are. I want to make sure that the exam, you know, could be done by you in about an hour. And so then that gives you like kind of an extra half-hour buffer, you know, to be able to, you know, go back and review over problems. Or if you maybe know you're a slower test taker, it will help you with that. But make sure you don't spend too much time on one problem in particular. I see this happen. You know, students are like, oh, I can get this. And so they keep trying. And then they don't get to like the last couple of questions on the exam. And they're like, oh, I totally knew how to do those, but I ran out of time. So don't fall into that boat, right? Make sure, you know, that you at least, you know, are able to go through all of the questions and then come back to ones that maybe you're like, okay, I think I can get this if I just spend a little bit more time on it, right? Just kind of watch the time as you're going through it. But an hour and a half should be plenty of time. Like I said, this is geared for you to be able to get done in about an hour. Okay. All right. Yeah. And so somebody asked about the exam. It is written, so it's not going to be like on a computer. You're going to have paper, pencil. You're going to be showing your work on it. And so I need you to show as much work as possible because I do give partial credit. And so, and as I'm kind of going through and writing things down on this exam review, you'll kind of see the type of work I'm showing, and that's kind of what I'm expecting to see from you. You know, just so make sure there's at least something there. Okay, and yeah, so it's not just an all or nothing kind of a thing. Okay, let's see, I lost my, there we go. Okay. So let's get started into some of these problems. And then as you have questions come up for you as we're going along, please, you know, bring them up. Let me know. I'll ask questions as we're going along here too. So please answer them either in the chat or just unmute yourself. I like to know people are there. If you're able to, you know, turn your videos on too, if your, you know, Wi-Fi and stuff will allow it, that would be great too. I'd love to see you guys' faces because I don't know you guys very well yet, and it would be nice to get to know you better. So okay, so let's go ahead and start in. So the first area that I have on this review is about, oh, let me say one more thing. And maybe I'll write this down up here just so you kind of know. So about half of the questions, oops, let's see, it's not letting me, oh, hold on a second, how's that going? So many things to plug in. Forgot to plug this one in. So as far as the questions go on the test, like I said, there's 14 of those questions, right? However, half of them are going to come from the problem solving module. Okay, so there's going to be, I think there are 7 questions from the problem solving module, because this is one, like, problem solving is just such a good thing to make sure that you can get down. Okay, and then the other, so this is going to be half of the test, right? But then the other half of the test is going to come from these guys together, right? So there's going to be like 7 questions between those two. So just to make sure you kind of know maybe where you want to, spend more time studying and stuff, that might be helpful for you. Okay. All right. Let's get started on these. And like I said, ask questions as we go along here. Please don't just sit there wondering what I'm doing. Okay. All right. So for this first one, for the right triangle below, find the length of x and round to the nearest tenth. So whenever you're trying to find the length of a side, right, you're going to use something that I call side finders. And I'm going to write those over here just to make sure we're together on this. Okay, so our side finders are, if we have something like the sine of theta, right? So that's always like dealing with what kind of a degree it is, right? And that equals, now sine, right, is opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm going to put that kind of here, opposite over hypotenuse, okay? And then cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so these are things that you need to have memorized. This will not be given anywhere on the exam. You've got to know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. And sometimes we refer to this as SOHCAHTOA, just to have a way to remember, right? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent opposite over adjacent. So just a way to kind of remember that. All right, so when I've been working with students on some of these, thank you for those of you that are coming to office hours. I love it when you come and ask me some questions there. But one thing that I've noticed that is happening is sometimes people are like, I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to use sine, cosine, or tangent. And so on the homework, I kind of like guess until I get one of them right, but I don't know really, how that is. So let me point this out and make sure this is clear for you. So this is the angle, right, that we know. That one's the 29 degrees right here. And so everything is dependent off of this. So notice that we are trying to find something that is opposite that angle. And then this is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always like the one straight across from that 90-degree angle, or it's the longest side is the way to think about it. So with this one, right, with opposite over hypotenuse, those are the things we're given, opposite and hypotenuse, or what we're kind of dealing with there. So then we can look and say, okay, is that, sine, cosine, or tangent? Well, that's going to be our sine, because we have the opposite over hypotenuse, right? So that means we want to use sine on this. All right, so when we set this up, right, we'll have sine of the degree of the angle, 29, equals, all right, our opposite over our hypotenuse, so the length of those sides. So our opposite is x, that's the one I don't know, over the hypotenuse, which is 10. And then I just need to solve this for x. And a lot of your calculators, you'll be able to put like just the whole thing in. So as long as I can see this is what I need to see on your homework or on the on the work on your test. So I know what you're doing, okay? And I'd really like it even one step further where you're showing me. So really to get x by itself, right, I have to multiply both sides by 10, all right? And so those divide out there, and then I'm left with x equals 10 times sine of 29. And then, like I said, most of you can just put that whole thing into your calculator just like it is there. And then it says to round to the nearest tenth if necessary on that. And so when you do that, right, 10 times the sine of 29, you get something close to 4.8 inches. Okay, and make sure, I guess on this one, it's not giving you lengths. On the test, it will. So make sure you have your, your labels and everything there. And one thing I just want you to keep in mind, what I tell students all the time, any kind, to whom there's a word question, you need a word answer, right? Meaning, like, explain what's going on there, put a label on it, make sure that, it's not just a number. Word problems need word answers. Okay, questions on that one, on how we got 4.8 inches?
Yeah, I looked mine's up and I got 0.6. Am I doing that wrong?
So I wonder if your calculator is not in degree mode. And that's a good thing to bring up. So on your calculator, like in really small letters at the top, does it say DEG? Because I know this has been a problem for other people in the class too. And so usually if you go to mode on your calculator, everybody's mode is in a different place. There's degree, radians, and gradient. And you want degree. DEG. The degree.
Oh, okay. I had it in radians.
Okay, yeah. So now put it in, and so I'm glad you brought that up because that's going to be something that, everybody wants to make sure that they're using the right mode. Okay, so try it again after you put it in degree mode and see if you come up with 4.8.
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for asking. That's great. Okay, so what about on number 2 then? So we have something similar here, but this time we're trying to find the measure of that angle, all right? And so this is where we need to use what I call angle finders. And this is where we use those inverse trigonometric functions, right? So my angle finders, theta equals the inverse sine. So when it says sine to the negative 1 power, that just means the inverse sine, right? Of, and then still the same thing, opposite over hypotenuse. So you're basically just using a different button on your calculator, right? If you look at your sine button and you do a shift on that one, it usually will give you that sine to the negative 1 power, that inverse sine. Okay, our other angle finder is inverse cosine. And again, it's that same thing up here, adjacent over hypotenuse. And then, oops, I'm running out of space here. And then tangent, the inverse tangent, is going to be opposite over adjacent. Okay, and so the reason why I'm putting these on here is I want to make sure that you're clear. Like, what are you using if you're trying to find sides? What are you using if you're trying to find angles? Sometimes people get those confused in your mind, but there's really only one way to do that with these. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So looking at this, somebody tell me whether we're going to want to use the inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent. How do you know?
Would we use the inverse cosine?
Okay. Why would you think inverse cosine?
Because we have the adjacent to the angle, which is 8, and then the hypotenuse, which would be 10.
Yeah. Does everybody see that? All right, we have the adjacent to this angle and the hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse, right, is that inverse cosine. So let's do inverse cosine. And then just like it is here, adjacent over hypotenuse, our adjacent is 8, so that goes on the top, and then 10 goes on the bottom. And again, for most of you, you can just put that whole thing in your calculator just like it is there. But I want to see this on your paper because I need to know what it is you're putting into your calculator. Because if you just put something in and I don't know what you did, then I have to mark it all wrong because I don't know where to give you partial credit. So make sure you at least write this out and then you can write the answer on that. And what do you guys come up with when you put that into your calculator?
They're 30 degrees.
Yeah, so it says round to the nearest degree, and so that would be 37 degrees on this one. Everybody getting that? See how to do this? Okay, and if you have a question, speak up, because if you have a question, somebody else here is going to have that same question, so please don't be silent about it. Okay, let's move on to number 3, where we're going to have a kind of little story problem here. All right, TV screens are measured on the diagonal. Right, so if you have like a 70-inch TV, right, that's along the diagonal, not like the length or the width of it. Okay, if we have a TV cabinet that is 54 inches long and 36 inches high, how large of a TV could we put in the space? Well, if I'm dealing with something like this and I'm trying to imagine a picture in my head, why not just kind of draw it out? Oops, that doesn't look really very straight, but we'll just assume, right? So here's the spot in the cabinet that I have, and I knew that this was 54 inches, and I know this is 36 inches, but I need to figure out what the diagonal length is because that's going to tell me what size of TV I can fit there, okay? Okay, sorry, somebody just asked, how do I know if the question is a side finder or angle finder? So let me go back up to this other one just to clarify, right? So what I mean is, so on this one, it says find the measure of the angle. So that's why we're using the angle finders. Where up here, it's find the length of a side, right? Find the length of X. So that's a side finder. Does that make sense? So it just depends on what it's asking for. Is it asking for the length of a side or the measure of an angle? That'll tell you. Okay, good question. Just wanted to make sure I didn't overlook that one. All right, and so how are we going to figure out what that diagonal is? Anybody tell me? Just unmute yourself and tell me.
Pythagorean theorem?
Yeah, Pythagorean theorem, right? Which says a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is always the hypotenuse on this. Okay, and so we're going to have, and it doesn't matter which one is A and which one's B. So I'm just going to put this in here. So 36 squared plus 54 squared equals C squared, right? So C is what I'm trying to find here. And then you'd want to, square root both sides. So I wrote it like this just because you can put it in your calculator. Most of you can put it in this way, right? So if you have 36 squared plus 54 squared, right, and then have the square root of all of that, or you can just figure those out separately. What is 36 squared? What is 50 squared? Add them together and then take the square root. But you've got to add them together before you take the square root is the most important thing to remember there. All right, and so what do you come up with there?
64 inches.
Okay, so 64 point, what did you have there? Like
899.
Okay, so why didn't you write it, or why didn't you round it up? Because it looks like it should be rounded up. Why didn't you round up?
Oh, I actually can't see what the word is on my screen that says round your answer to the nearest blank.
Oh, inch. Round it to the nearest inch. No, but you're right. We should only go to 64, right? Because it's not 65, right? We couldn't fit a 65-inch TV in there because it's just shy of 65. So I have to kind of round that one down to 64. So I was just trying to make sure you guys are clear on the rounding of this, why that would stay at a 64-inch TV. All right, whoops, is the largest, right, you can have.
Can you kind of repeat the logic behind that again? Sorry.
Yeah, so think about if you were trying to put, so this 64.8, right? Why wouldn't it be 65? Well, we're saying that is as big as can possibly fit there. So if it's, 64 point something, I can't round that up to 65 because 65 would be too big because it's not there at, to 65 yet. So I have to keep that one at 64, no matter, that this was an 8 or a 2 or whatever, that number is here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit.
Because I don't know if somebody else wants to put it in say it in a different way, how you're thinking of it. Like why we can't round up on this, right? It won't fit, right?
Basically, if you're rounding up, then yeah, there's going to be more space in the where the television would go. That's why you would end up rounding down instead of up.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh,
Because we're trying to figure what can fit in this TV cabinet. This TV cabinet is only so big, right? And it won't accommodate 65, but it will 64 or smaller. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is the opposite of what we've been learning that we need to round up. Is this the only question that we need to
You gotta
down?
think about the question, if it makes sense, for what it is you're talking about. So on this one, I'm saying, well, think it through. If you rounded it up to 65, right, that's going to be too big because it might not fit in that space anymore, right? Because it was only 64 point something. So there could be other questions, that are also where you're not doing the rounding. But I'd say for the most part you do, unless you can think of a reason to not round up, then you should round it up, right? Okay. But this one won't fit. 65, won't fit in that space, but 64 will.
For what I'm very understanding, we just need to be really focused on what are you asking, like either inch, either tenth, because that's gonna be like a tricky question.
Yeah, I think it's good to pay really close attention to those small details, right? And see how I underline some things in the question. Do that on your exam. Sometimes you'll be amazed how that's going to, help you, like on this one, round to the nearest inch, right? Or if it says nearest tenth of an inch or something like that, right? You want to make sure that you're rounding to those places because you will get docked a little bit if your rounding isn't correct, right? You're not going to miss the whole thing if you put 65 instead of 64. It might take off one, point or whatever, depending on what work you've shown and stuff. So, yeah. Okay. Well, let's look at this next one. So now we've got this hill, right? So a photographer wants to set up his camera to view the sunrise coming over the mountain and needs to know the angle to set up his equipment, right? So that guy is right here, right? He's wanting to set up his equipment down here so that he's looking up and the sun is going to come up over here. I know my pictures are so beautiful. All right. Okay, so if they set up the camera 254 meters from the base of the mountain, all right, so if we're thinking about where this one is, well, that's from him to the base of the mountain right here. So that's going to be the 254 meters. And then from the base of the mountain, oh, sorry, and the mountain is 577 meters high. So that's going to be this one, right? 577 meters high is how high that hill is. And then we can figure out the angle from this. All right, so I want to hear from you guys. What do you think we would do now that we've got this picture drawn? Sometimes having a picture is going to really help you on these. What do you think we might need to do? So first of all, ask yourself, are we finding the length of a side, or are you finding the measure of an angle? Measure of an angle. So we want to use one of those angle finders, right? So which one are we going to use on this?
Tangent.
Okay, why do you say tangent?
We have the opposite and the adjacent.
Yeah. All right, so you've got to look and see what is given to you, right? And it's all based off of this angle right here, right? That's the one we're trying to find. So opposite is this one, adjacent is this one. So when we write this out, right, and again, so we're going to have theta. It's just a Greek letter that they usually use to denote angle measures, right? And we want the inverse tangent, because we're trying to find the degree of that, of the opposite over adjacent. So make sure you're really careful in how you write these out. So the opposite is going to be our 577 on the top and our 254 on the bottom. All right, and if you switch those, you're going to get a totally different answer. So be really careful. Okay, but then that's another thing. Like if I can see that you switched that, right, because you're writing out your work, then I can give you partial credit because you at least knew that, you know, you were supposed to use tangent, and I definitely will give you credit for that. Okay, but get those put in the right place to get the full answer. Okay, and so what do you guys come up with there? And this one says round to the nearest tenth this time, right? So what would,
66.2.
say that one more time.
66.2.
66.2, and then degrees, right? Because we're trying to find the degree of that angle. Is that what everybody came up with? You getting this? All right, we got one more on the trig stuff, and then we'll kind of move to a different one. So this one doesn't have a picture drawn for us, but again, like draw a picture. If you're trying to imagine something in your brain and a picture isn't given, draw it out, okay? All right, so from the top of a 168-foot lighthouse, the angle of depression to a ship in the ocean is 25 degrees. How far is the ship from the base of the lighthouse? Okay, so let's see here. I make my pretty little lighthouse over here. It's not going to be stellar, but ooh, that's a lovely lighthouse.
Sorry, Becky.
Yeah.
Can I really quick see the results of the previous example?
Yeah, let me see if I can fit it on here. You see that? I'll draw this other one. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so let me try and draw what I have here. So my boat is somewhere out here, right? And it's, you know, we're trying to think about, it says the angle of depression to a ship. So if you're at the top of this lighthouse up here, right, and we're looking at the angle of depression to this, let's make sure everybody is clear what that means. All right, so if an angle of depression is when, if you were looking straight out, right, so remember you're at the top of the lighthouse, you're look straight out. Well, do you have to look up or down? Well, I have to look down, so that's an angle of depression. All right, if I had to look up, then it would be, oh my gosh, why did I forget the name of that? Angle of, oh, I can't remember what the name of it is right now. All right, why am I forgetting? I hate it when that happens. Okay, but this is the angle right here that we're looking at, okay, because we're up here looking down. So that would be 25 there. Okay, but there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of figure this out, because this doesn't really help me when it's out here, right? Because this is my right triangle that I'm trying to deal with. But one thing that we know, and so we can see, and this is supposed to be, these are supposed to be making right angles, but my drawing is definitely not looking great, right? But if these were, you know, parallel to those other lines, right, then you could see that what we have, these are called alternate interior angles. So this angle and that angle, if they're like across from each other like that, then those are going to be the same measure. Okay, so if I know this is 25, right, and it tells me that the top or the lighthouse is 168, so I'll put that over here, 168.
Oh, I'm guessing that the other like knowing for angle of depression, like the reverse of that would be angle of elevation, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Great.
Thank you. Why that elevation escaped my mind, I can't tell you, but yes, that is correct. Okay, and so this is one way that you could do this. So if I know that this angle, right, is 25, and I'm trying to figure out how far out that boat is, then I want to find the angle, or the length, the distance of x here. All right, so this is a side finder this time, because I'm not trying to find the angle measure, I'm trying to find how far that is. So again, I'm going to try and figure out, am I using sine, cosine, or tangent? Well, according to this angle, right, this one's adjacent and this one's opposite. All right, so what if we,
Tangent?
yeah, so we want tangent, right? So the tangent of 25
What are you doing?
is opposite over
What are you
adjacent.
doing?
Oops, let's see.
Trying to do my homework.
Okay. So opposite over adjacent, all right? So I'm going to have 168 over x that way. Is everybody with me to that point? How I set that up? And now I'm just trying to solve for x. Well, I can't solve for x when it's on the bottom here, but I can, you know, like multiply both sides by x so that I can get rid of that on the bottom and then put it on the top over here. All right, so I really have x times tangent of 25 equals 168. And then to get x by itself, I need to divide both sides by tangent of 25. And so then I would put this right there in my calculator to figure out what x is. So 168 in the numerator, and then type in tangent of 25 in the denominator. And what do you come out with when you do that? And again, it says round to the nearest foot.
360 feet.
Yeah. Everybody come up with 360 feet on this? If you
So
did,
with that, like on this one, like I got 360.5. So then that wouldn't be 360, that wouldn't round up? Or I guess we're just doing,
when I did it, I got 360.2.
so I took tangent,
Oh, you probably have a rounding error.
I got 168 divided over, and I did 0.466.
Yeah.
So
So, because that you're not putting the whole number in down there, like all of the digits. And so what happens is you get a rounding error on that. So it's best to just put it in like this, or put as many digits possible in there. Like if, you know, like the whole string of what you can see on your calculator, rather than like just truncating it off. Otherwise you might just be off by a little bit. So yeah, it should be 360.27. And so then it would just round to 360. Okay, but again, if I can see your work and see what you're doing, what you're saying to do, I can see, you know, whether you have the right idea or not. Okay, so that will inform me to why you would have put 361 instead of 360. So just show your work and be good. Okay, so that's all of the stuff with the things that you need to know about trig, right? Make sure any of that you're.
That's one more question.
Yeah.
On the previous.
Please.
If you scroll up, so on the question, it says the angle of depression to a ship in the ocean is 25 degrees.
Uh-huh.
So my initial thought was the degree from the ship looking up. So down below, and I guess I got a little tripped up with the 25 degrees on the opposite triangle.
Yeah.
Is that
So if it said that it was an angle of elevation from the ship up to the lighthouse, that would be this angle, because when you're thinking of an angle of elevation, so think about, okay, if I was looking straight out, would I have to look up or down to see what I'm looking at? And
Okay.
so that's why that would be, if it said angle of elevation, then you'd put it here.
okay?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but since it,
I have a question.
yeah, but since, just 1 second, since it said depression, right? It's like from the top of this lighthouse looking down,
Okay.
right? Okay.
So I guess that's what I'm asking is like, is the depression always going to be so like looking out the degree from looking out down?
Exactly.
And then I would just
An elevation
the
looking
opposite of
out
that.
up. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Okay, let's see. Danielle, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So either way is gonna be angle of depression or angle of elevation is always gonna be either the 25, like in this, as is in this case, like if it's either in the top or down, it's always the same number.
Yeah, whatever angle they're giving to you here is what you're putting, you know, as far as your angle in your picture. All right, so he was saying if it was angle of elevation, then we'd be putting that 25 here.
No, yeah, like I get that. It's just like no matter if it's depression or elevation, is like the number is 25. So it's either just where you are basically putting the number or not. Like
Yeah.
either on top or down, but it's always gonna be the same number.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't
mean-
affect at all if it's elevation or depression.
it doesn't. No, that's just telling you which angle it is.
Okay.
The only other thing that, I mean, I think the videos may have explained, and that some of you might be using, and I don't want you to get confused, is you could find the measure of this angle here, right? So this forms a 90-degree angle. So if I know this is 25, then I'm doing 90-degree angle minus 25 degrees gives me 65. So I know this one's 65. So I could use 65 and then X and 168, but I'd be using something different, than, it's not going to be set up exactly the same way here. It's going to be opposite over adjacent on that. But then we have to be careful in how we do it because we're going to have the X on the top and the 168 on the bottom. So I'm just trying to point out there's more than one right way that you can do this. And so if you practice doing it that way on the homework and that makes better sense to your brain, great. If you practice this way where you're like, okay, that's 25. So the alternate interior angle, right? So this one that's kind of just kitty corner to it there. Right, diagonal from it is also 25. You can use that. So either way, you get totally full points on. I'm not, saying you have to do something a specific way. I just want to make sure you know that either way would be good for me. Okay, since I know that some of the videos may have talked about it that way. Okay, so let's move on and talk a little bit here about some of these story problems, the stuff with measurement and problem solving. All right, it is estimated that a driver takes on average 1.2 seconds from seeing an obstacle to react by applying the brakes to stop or swerve. How far will a car moving 25 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood travel before the driver reacts to an obstacle? All right, so on something like this, I'm looking at it going, okay, I'm given, I'm trying to figure out how many miles, like if you're going 25 miles per hour, I'm really trying to change that to feet per second, since that's what I'm kind of dealing with there. But it wants to know specifically, the amount of feet, right? The distance that you're going to be here. So for me, I start off with that 25 miles per hour. Right? And so I write it out this way. So 25 miles per 1 hour. Okay. And then I need to go through and change it. Now, remember, there's going to be given to you a few things on it, or it might tell you in the question here, right? So it might remind you that 5,280 feet is 1 mile. All right, so that will be given to you. Okay.
So we will get conversion rates throughout the test, correct?
Yeah, so any kind of conversion rate that you will need to use will be given to you. So,
Perfect.
So all of them aren't going to be given, but anything that you need to use on the test will. Okay? Yeah. All right. So, except there's a couple, they don't give you the ones with time. But most people know, right? There's 24 hours in a day, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 seconds in a minute, and so on. So let's go ahead and change this from miles per hour, and we want to get it in feet per second. And so I need to, start by changing one or the other. So say I'm going to change miles to feet, right? Because this is something given to me. So I know that 1 mile, and I'm putting this on the bottom because I need my miles to cancel out. So the way that these labels cancel out, right, it's the same way that kind of things happen with numbers as well. And any of you, that have taken chemistry, you kind of see something like this. And most of you, if you're in this class, you probably won't be taking chemistry because you'd need to go into 1010 and so on to do that. But if you've taken it before, so let's see, 5,280 feet in 1 mile, all right? Okay, so then my miles divided out, and now I'm left with feet per hour. Well, I want to be in feet per seconds, because I can give me stuff about seconds here. So let's go ahead and change. How do I change hours? Well, let's change them to minutes, right? So 1 hour is 60 minutes. And so then my hours divide out here. And then I've got 1 minute is 60 seconds. And then again, those minutes divide out. And so I'm left with feet per second, which is what I wanted to be left with. Okay, and I can see that on here. And then really I'm just multiplying across the top, multiplying across the bottom, and then dividing those out to get my answer. So if I multiply across the top, 25 times 5,280, I get 132,000. And then 60 times 60 is 3,600. And then if I divide those out, I get 36.66666 feet, right? And it says, does it tell you where to round here? It will always tell you on the test where to round to. Sometimes on the reviews I forget to put those on. But let's just round it to the nearest tenth, right? So that would be 36.7 feet. Okay, is approximately how long it's going to take you to stop. right? And if there's like a little kid in the street, like, that's why they tell you to go so slow in residential areas, right? Because, when it's going slower, the less you're going to move, like after you apply the brakes. So, okay. And you don't have to do it this way. Okay. If some of you are looking at that going, oh my gosh, that is not making sense to me, I do it a different way. As long as I can see like that you're multiplying these two together and you're dividing by these two things, I don't care how you have it done. You
So
don't
like
have
if
to
we
set it
showed
up.
it, I mean, with 1 mile equaling 5280 feet, like if we just show our work
Mm-hmm.
and go through and kind of break everything out
Yeah.
to get our number, that's fine.
Yep. Just show me your work of what you're doing. Like show me, you're multiplying those two together, to get that number, and then you divide by 60, or however, you're thinking to do it. So
Awesome.
yeah, you don't have to have it done this way. Like I said, like I'm not very specific on how you have to do things because everybody's brain just works a little bit differently, wants to work through problems differently, and I'm totally cool with that. Okay, just show the work that you have. And if you're having a hard time showing your work on some of the questions, because you're like, well, I'm kind of thinking through it and I'm not sure exactly, what I'm doing, then you got to write something in words down, but it would be better to show me mathematically like what you're thinking and what you're doing on most of these. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Okay, so let's keep going on this. We're definitely going to be going over time. So if some of you have to jump off, I understand, but there's going to be some good things that we're going to get to here. So I'd say at least watch it back if you can't stay on. Okay, so Amy bought 4 pounds, 8 ounces of turkey, 5 pounds, 12 ounces of ham. How much total did she buy? Well, when I add these together, all right, so I can only add my pounds with my pounds and my ounces with my ounces. And again, you might do this just a little bit differently than how I am, but I add the ounces together and I get 20 ounces. All right, and I notice that that is more than 1 pound. And so I can't leave this as 9 pounds, 20 ounces. You'll get it marked off if you leave it like that, because I want you to see that 20 ounces, right, could break down to be 16 ounces, and that's 1 more pound, right? So it means I get 1 more pound here. And then what would be left here? Well, 16 minus or subtracted from 20 gives me 4 ounces is what's left, right? And so really, so this is 1 pound here, right? Or sorry, yeah, 1 pound that adds to that. So my answer is going to be 10 pounds and then 4 ounces. That's a lot of meat. I guess big, huge party must be happening there. Okay. All right. And again, just however you can show your work on that is great. Okay. Okay. So number 8, a car dealer recently had a promotion which they gave 13% discount to the first 50 people. All right. If you're one of those people and the car you're interested in costs $25,000, find the discount amount. So notice this is asking me for 2 things. Find the discount amount and the new price of the car. There's definitely going to be questions like that on the exam where they're asking for 2 different things. Make sure that you are noticing that on the question. Okay, so to find the discount amount, I will just take that 25,000 and I can times it by the 13%. 13% as a decimal is 0.13, right? And so really, like, you can just write it like this so I can see, oh, you're multiplying those together, but then just do that on your calculator. Like, I don't need to see your work of, multiplying that out. Like, I'm fine with you using your calculator, but I want to know that you're multiplying that together, right? Is how you're getting there. So when I do that, I get 3,250. All right, and so this is the discount amount. All right, that's not how much you're paying for the car. That would be nice, right? But that's not how much you're paying for it. That's how much it's being discounted. So then what do I need to do to figure out what the new price would be that you're going to pay?
Would you add it?
Would we add it? Let's think.
You subtract it from the 25,000?
Yeah. So if it was like tax or something, then we'd add it on, right? But since it says it's a discount, we're going to subtract it from it. Does that make sense? So we'll take that 25,000 and then subtract off 3,250. But like I said, if it was like tax or, something like that, then you would add it together there. And so when I subtract those, I get 21,750. And again, make sure you remember your like dollar sign, right? And it's the new price of the car. Okay, or a discounted price, or however you want to say that. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about absolute change and relative change. That's what this next question is about. So in 2017 to 2018, SLCC awarded 3,251 associate degrees, and Utah State University awarded 1,346 associate degrees. Right? We by far do the most associate degrees in the state all the time. All right, so the first thing it wants me to do is compare or find the absolute change, right, of SLCC compared to USU. So how would I do that? How do I find absolute change?
Division.
Not division, that's the relative change. We'll divide in relative. What do we have to do? We have to do to find absolute. We're just going to be subtracting the two numbers, right? So we're trying to figure out what's the difference. So when it's saying absolute change, it just wants you to find the difference between those two numbers. So 3,251 minus 1,346. Right? And so when I subtract those, 1,905, right, is the difference between those two. So I'm just subtracting them for absolute change. Write that down somewhere. If you think you're going to forget it, write it down so you remember in the test. I just got to subtract those. Okay.
So with the absolute change, it just means like the difference, which is subtraction, correct?
That's exactly right. It's always going to be the difference. Always subtract them. Okay, and relative change is always going to be division. And on this one, you always want to put the number that you came up with here, right? So our difference is on the top, and then you're dividing it by that original amount of, so how many SLCC associate degrees there are. So whatever that one is. So 3,251. Okay, and when I divide that out, I get 0.5859, blah, 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 blah. All right, and this one says round to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. So be careful on this because sometimes people get this wrong. So we got to move this decimal 2 places back to change it to a percent, right? So I've got 58.59 something, something, something percent. But now if I'm rounding that to the nearest 1/10, then that 9 is really going to round that one up to a 6. So 58.6%.
Does it matter if you were to divide it 320 or 3,251 on top of the 1,905?
Yep.
Would it be different?
It's going to give a totally different answer. You're going to be having something over 100%. So that should clue you in. Wait a minute. How could, it be over that 100%? So yeah, you're always going to do whatever the difference was here, right? And it's usually going to be divided by that bigger number.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Okay, and then just make sure you know how to do some conversions. And like I said, you're going to have whatever you need on the exam to be able to do some of these conversions. And I'm going to just kind of go through these quickly because I do want to make sure we get to the voting theory, right? But I'm trying to change 6.75 gallons to cups. So I start off with 6.75 gallons, right? And so for me, I'm thinking, okay, what do I know about gallons? Well, on your page, it tells you that there are, 1 gallon is 4 quarts. And although that's not to cups yet, we're getting closer, right? Because it's, we're using like a smaller amount of volume in there, right? So then the gallons are gone. I'm in quarts, but I want to change to cups. And so I know that 1 quart is 4 cups. And now
So
I'm just
we're
left
gonna
with-
have to memorize that. Like we're gonna have to have that memorized beforehand.
No, I said whatever you need to make any of these like conversions, it's going to give you whatever kind of conversions you
Oh.
need, but you just need to know where to use them.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So these things that I told you, like, 1 gallon is 4 quarts, that's going to be given to you. Does that make sense? And so then you just show me how you work it out. And like I said, like if you're just showing me that you're just multiplying all 4 of those together, then that's fine. Then I can tell that you understand what that is. And when you do that, it should be 108 cups.
So we have to know that 4 quarts is equal to like 4 cups then?
1 quart is equal to 4 cups.
Or yeah.
If it was asking you to change it to cups, it would give you that conversion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm,
So
okay.
there's no conversions that you'll have to have memorized except for the time.
Perfect.
So like in this example, it would end up showing the conversion of 1 quart to 4 cups.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So it would give you both of these things. And it's just going to be like, it's going to just be the same thing on each question, right, that you are given there. But anything that you need will be in that table that will tell you, like 1 gallon is 4 quarts, 1 quart is 4 cups, right? 5,280 feet in 1 mile, or whatever it is you need, it will be there. Okay. All right. Then changing 110 pounds to kilograms. So again, like, let's see, go like this. So they give you the conversion that 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. Okay, and the reason why I like this is because it's a little bit easier to tell. Like I can see, okay, those pounds divide out, and so I can see that I need to divide that in this case. All right, so 110 divided by 2.2 gives me 50 kilograms. Okay, so again, that conversion would be given to you. 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. All right, if you need it, it's going to be there for you. All right, and then changing from kilometers to feet. All right, well, this one we have to like change from one system to the other, right? So that's a little bit different. So in this one, let's see if I have 1.2 kilometers. That's where I'm starting. I'm trying to change to feet. Well, I don't know how many, feet there are here, but one conversion that is given to me in the table is that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So I might look at that and say, okay, is that something I can use on there? Okay. And then meters, right? Now I'm like, okay, well, I need to change it either to yards or feet, right? Because I'm trying to get to feet specifically. But another conversion that's given to me is that 1 yard is, let's see, 0.914 meters, right? So I put the meters on the bottom so those can divide out. And then the other thing that would be given to me is that 3 feet is 1 yard. So the yards divide out. All right, so then I can see on the top, I'm multiplying 1.2 times 1,000 times 3, and then dividing it by that 0.914. Does that make sense? So when you do that, you should get 3,938, and it says round to the nearest tenth, so 0.7 feet. Okay, and that's because we have this weird conversion right there. It's not going to come out nicely. Sometimes it will, though. Sometimes on the test, they make them come out really nice. Hint, hint, hint.
Real quickly, can we return to 9B?
Of course. Yeah,
All right, thank you.
sure. Okay, so the last thing to talk about here is the voting theory stuff. Okay, so with voting theory, like I said at the beginning, you don't need to have memorized the different like criterion for, fairness and stuff. I will not be giving you any questions on that. So don't worry about like memorizing those different types of criteria. Okay, however, you need to know how to use some of these different types of methods, right? That you do need to know how to do. So let's go through these and just talk a little bit about them. Okay, so let's start off here, right? So I'm given, there's 4 candidates here. We got their first choice, second choice, third choice, and fourth choice. Okay, how do we figure out how many total voters there are? Yep, just add all of these guys together. All right, what do you get when you add those together?
62.
62. Okay, so there's 62 voters in this preference schedule that I'm looking at. Okay, so how many voters are required to win by majority? What do I mean by majority?
Ends up needing to have more than 50%.
More than 50%. So you could take 62, right, and find 50% of that, right? So let's see, I'll just do 50% of 62 is 31, but on that, we can't leave it at 31 because that's at 50%. It has to be more than 50%. So we just need to increase that one more on there. So we need a vote, we need 32 votes in order for somebody to win by majority. Okay. So it has to increase by 1 there. Got to make sure it's above 50%. Okay, so who wins by plurality, right? Well, plurality is just looking at our first choice boxes here, all right? And so maybe I'll just write these out down here to make sure you're seeing what I'm doing. So if I'm looking at candidate A, right? Well, A only shows up, whoops, I need to go down a little bit more. A only shows up in the first choice just here. So it has 17. All right, B shows up in 2 different places. So we have 7 and 8. So I'm going to put both of those down here, right? So 7 plus 8 gives me 15 total votes. Then C, candidate C, has 12, right? We're just looking on this first choice line. And then D is 18. Okay, so who wins by plurality? D, right? D has the most first choice votes. So, right, let's just put that down here, most first choice votes. That's what we mean by plurality. Did he win by, or she, did D win by majority? Because remember, majority would have to be somebody winning by 32 or more, right? So keep that straight in your mind. So he did not win by majority, but he did win by plurality, meaning he was the highest, even though it wasn't over 50%. Okay. All right. Then 2 methods that I want to make sure that you know how to do really well, hint, 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 okay, is the instant runoff method. So that's plurality with elimination. And then board account is the other one, okay? So let's see, I might have to wonder if I can make this smaller, if it's gonna not do this very good. Let's see. Oh, shucks. Okay, at least I can see it there. Sorry, it's so small. Now, hopefully you can still see it okay, but I need to see this preference schedule up here so that we can write some things down. Okay, so with the instant runoff method, right, we look back here and the one that lost by plurality was C, because C had the lowest amount of first choice votes. So that means up here in my preference schedule, I'm just going to get rid of all my C's. So C goes away first because it was the lowest amount. Okay, and then we write a preference schedule again, but just shift everything up where those C's were. So I'm going to try and show you here. This is just how I do it to keep it organized. And I think it did it the same way on your... Okay, let's see. All right, so I can see, so 17, right, without the C in there, then I have A, D, and then B. Everybody with me there? Just getting rid of those C's. Then I have B, A, D, is this one. Is everybody following me how I'm getting these? And then B, D, A. And the next one, BAD. All right, I'm just shifting all of these depending on where C was. We got rid of C. And then DAB. Gonna dab it up. Here we go. Okay, so now let's look at this again and figure out who we need to get rid of here. All right, so again, you're just looking at this first choice line. All right, so A has 17 votes. Well, let's see, don't want to take too much room over here. We need this space. All right, so A has 17. B has all of these together. What do I get when I add those together?
$27.
27. And then D has 18. Is everybody with me there? So 17 was the smallest, right, which was our A's. So now we're going to get rid of all of our A's in here. Cross those guys out. And then again, we just move everything up into those places. So again, I'll write this down just to make sure. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys are seeing how I'm coming up with these. Sorry, that looks so bad. Hopefully we can fit this in okay. Okay, so now, right, I've got DB, that one, then BD, then another BD, another BD, and then the last one is DB. All right, so again, looking at our first choice line, all right, we see that B has all of these three together. Whoops. Went too far there. All right, what do I get when I add all of those guys up? 27. All right, and then our D's are here and here, right? So adding those together, what do I get? 35. Okay, so who's the winner then using this instant runoff method? Yeah, D, it must be the winner, right?
Question on these ones, did you want us to write out in graph kind of like what you did? Like one thing when I was doing these, like I would just kind of go through like visually to count them, but I just want to make sure that I'm
I mean, if you don't have any kind of work shown, if you miss it, then you'll miss all of the points on it. So if there's any way you can show me some work on how you got to it, then I can give you some partial credit where I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. It wasn't A that was or it was supposed to be A that was, next, but they chopped off D next or something. And so then I can see from there and then play it out the rest of the way. So, having made that mistake, I don't penalize you again for it. I just look and see if that's the mistake that you made, then did you come up with the right answer?
Cool.
Does that make sense? So showing as much work as possible is definitely to your benefit. You're definitely going to be given a lot more points that way. Okay, and then board account. All right, so remember board account, I guess I scrolled clear up, but is when we assign points to each of these, right? So notice that it says use the count that assigns 1 point to last place, right? So my fourth choice gets 1 point. My third choice goes up from there, gets 2 points. The second choice gets 3 points. And the first choice gets 4 points. So this is just a way to weight these, so using board account is, kind of weighting, which one, is going to win because, if they had a lot of second choice ones, right? But maybe not the most in the first choice, they still could come out to be the winner type thing. All right, so on this, what I usually do, and kind of hard to show here, right? But if I have candidate A, so here's A. So the way I'm doing this is I'm going to look at my A's all in here. Okay, I guess I'll have to go there. All right, so I can see that A has 17, but since it's in the first choice, it gets 4 points. So when I'm writing down the work, I'm just doing like 4 times 17, right? It's weighting those heavier because it was a first choice. Then in the next one, I find A, and it has 2 points, right? So plus 2 times 7. And then I keep doing that for all of my A's. Plus 1 times 12. Right, the next one is 3 times 8. And then the last one there is 3 times 18. All right, and then you just total those all up. And you would do that same thing, for B, C, and D, right? So you need to do it for all of them and then figure out whoever has the highest amount of points is the winner on this. Okay, and kind of getting low on time here, but if you guys can see this, let's see.
Right, I'm lost a tiny bit.
Okay, let's figure this out on the first one, so make sure.
So I thought board account was so first choice was times 4, second choice was times 3, times 2, and so on. So wouldn't you go through like 17 times 4, 7 times 4, 12 times 4, 8 times 4, and so on?
So 7, since, that was third choice. So he only gets 2 points for those 7 votes. So that's why it's the 2 times 7.
Okay, so you're basically saying based off of the plurality method after candidates A, C
No,
eliminated?
nope, so let me get rid of these in here. So I'm going back to just nothing's in there. And I'm going through and I'm just looking at where my A's are at, right? So my A gets 4 times 17. My A here gets 2 times 7.
Okay, sorry,
Does that
I was
make
getting
sense?
confused. For me, like when I work out, like write out my work. I just went through and created like the multiplications for every single one.
Uh-huh.
And I went back and like selected the A's from
Okay.
those spots.
Yeah, that
Is
works
that
too.
okay, Jen?
Yeah, of
Oh.
course. Yeah, that works. Yeah, everybody has kind of a different way of doing it. So as long as you can come up with, those numbers and stuff, and I'll just write them up here. I mean, what I came up with was 172 for A, and then 149 for B, 146 for C, and then 153. And you guys can, try and do these your own way later just to make sure you know how to do that. And so for me, it looks like, A was the winner.
Okay.
All right. So A was the winner, right, on the board account. And let's see. And then, but on some of these other ones, right, D was the winner for plurality. D was the winner on instant, runoff and stuff. But when we weight things, right, then A becomes the winner on that. Okay. So those are basically the methods that I want to make sure that you know how to do, right? Majority, plurality, instant runoff method, and board account. And like I said, don't spend time like memorizing those fairness criterion. I mean, they're great to kind of, see like if it makes sense that one wins over another and stuff, but I'm not going to ask any questions like that on the exam. Okay. It's just on how to find it using these different methods. Okay. All right. Other questions you guys maybe have thought of before we sign off today?
I have a quick question, Maggie. So technically, all the quiz is gonna be this format, or should we be expecting like other type of questions, like more like I don't know, different type of problems, or is this gonna be just the type of problems that we're gonna be looking for?
Yeah, my reviews aren't going to be exactly the questions on the test, if that's what you're asking. But these things that I gave at the beginning here, let me maybe go in a little bit again, right? If you, and I can send this to you as well, right? So these are the things that I want to make sure that you know how to do in that problem solving module. So, like there's going to be like a question about percents, but maybe it's not one where it's a discounted percent. Maybe it's a percent like adding a tip on or adding tax on it, right? But just knowing how to use percents. Okay, make sure you know absolute and relative change, right? Rates and proportions, and then being able to convert from, one unit to another. Okay, and then same thing like on trig. So these 4 things are the things that you need to make sure that you know. And then in voting theory, these 3 things. But with the fairness criteria, remember I just said, I'm not going to ask questions on it, but it is kind of a good thing to keep in mind. Like, does it make sense, with some of those, is it fair that so-and-so won? Okay. Okay, anything else? Good questions. I appreciate all you guys' participation today too. It's great. And it's great to see your faces. I just got to see a few of you. I love it. Okay, nothing else? How are you guys feeling about it? Getting there? So, I mean, if this is where I'm telling you to focus, right, and you're feeling like you're struggling with some of those, try and go back to your homework and work some more example problems like those type, and that will help you feel more confident going into the test. Okay?
Are you going to have any office hours tomorrow?
I will. So 12 to 1 and then 5:30 to 6:30.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to put all this together and go through it with us.
You're so welcome. So welcome. Thank you guys. Good luck to you on the exam. Remember, you can take it Thursday or Friday this week. If you don't have it signed up for yet, get signed up for it right now, because if you put it off, you might not get a time slot that you need. If you're struggling, if you're coming across anything that's not letting you register for it, then call the testing center. I really can't do anything on my end, but if you call them and tell them what problem you're having, they can help you get it figured out. Okay. All right.
You know
Yes.
about how
Thank you,
long
Vicki.
after we take the exam when we'll be able to kind of find out?
Yeah, I try to have the tests back to you guys. So I'll be posting it so where it says exam 1 on Canvas, I will upload your graded test there so you can look through it and see what mistakes you made and any feedback that I'm giving you on it. And so I try to get it done within a week of being able to get it. So I can't get the exams until that next Monday since it closes on Friday. And so then the Monday after that, I should have them ready. I try to do it sooner than that, but I say give me a week, and that usually is enough time to get them back to you guys. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
You're so welcome. Hey guys, have a super night. And if you have more questions, come see me at my office hours tomorrow or reach out to me. Okay? Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.